Excited to be back for my second Nanit Lab Symposium. I hope this is this this means it's an ongoing tradition. Um, so let's begin. So this figure here is exemplar data from one baby that's representative of um, a typical year of nightly wake episodes for infants. You can see that the developmental trajectory of wake episodes over the year is decreasing. Increasing periods of consolidated sleep, but you can also notice these periods of intermittent sleep disruption. So every so often, there seems to be a spike in nightly wake episodes. So even as sleep is becoming more consolidated in general, infant sleep becomes more fragmented around the time that they acquire new motor milestones. So, over the transition from pre crawling to crawling, for example, crawlers have higher rates of sleep related difficulties than age matched pre crawlers. And similarly, the younger that infants are when they learn to crawl or to learn how to pull to a stand, the more likely they are to experience disrupted sleep. And we've found that deviations from the average night sleep duration and also number of night wakings have been temporarily linked to the onset of sitting, crawling, pulling to stand, and walking in microgenetic longitudinal case study. And in this study, we showed that there really weren't any distinctions between the onsets of stable skills like sitting and mobile skills like crawling and walking. So we have all of this evidence relating sleep fragmentation to motor skill acquisition. But despite all this converging evidence, we still have many, many questions um, remaining about the underlying relationship between sleep fragmentation and motor milestone acquisition. So, our first research question is about what drives sleep fragmentation that's associated with the onset of new motor milestones in infancy. So, previous studies have been limited in their ability to address this question because of some key limitations, such as small sample size or cross sectional design or subjective parent report of infant sleep. And so we tried to answer this question by addressing these limitations with the first project to document how motor milestone onsets shape the quality of infant sleep on a large scale using prospective parent reports of developmental milestones, and then also using Nanit, audio video sonography, as we've heard several times, objective quantification of infant sleep that is as accurate as actigraphy and less intrusive than actigraphy. Um, so here are some more details. For this talk, I'm going to present just a subset of data from this larger ongoing longitudinal study that is examining the relationship between infant sleep quality and their motor development over the first year of life. Today, I'll focus on data from 107 families who started participating before their baby had started crawling independently, and another 124 families who started participating before their baby was walking independently. And Nanit uh, documented their infant sleep with the infrared camera mounted over the crib. And our interest in sleep metrics were those related to the overall quality of night sleep, like night wakings, sleep efficiency, and also number of parent visits to the crib. So those were our measures of sleep. We also measured motor skill development. So to document skill onset, parents responded to a daily prompt within the Nanit app. So it was in the app that they were already using with the camera. We didn't have to introduce any new measurements tools. And the prompt asked whether they had observed their baby crawling less than 10 feet or more than 10 feet that day? Yes or no question. Or did they observe their baby walking less than 10 feet or more than 10 feet that day? And so with this prospective diary, we were able to capture infants' very first crawling and walking steps, and then also mastery of crawling and walking after they had been doing the skill for some time. So the preliminary look at this data, we used a change point analysis on night wakings and sleep efficiency to test whether infant sleep was disrupted on or near the nights of skill onset. So change point analysis looks for abrupt mean changes in time series data. So this was calculated over 32 nights, so 16 nights on either side of onset. And we would calculate the within subject mean for each of the sleep metrics and then the deviation for that sleep metric on each night. And so these two figures here are showing for baby's first crawling steps, so the first night that their parents ever observed them crawling less than 10 feet. And we can see that for sleep efficiency, so this solid line is reflecting change. And so the line is flat. There's no deviations around the skill onset, which is the green data point. So no change around the onset of first crawling steps for sleep efficiency. But we do see for night wakings that the number of night wakings goes down a few days after babies take their first crawling steps. So then we also see we'll look at the same results for first walking steps. We get a very similar pattern that really the very first time babies took their first walking steps, their sleep did not change. The line reflecting deviation is flat around the onset for both night wakings and for sleep efficiency. But now we can move on to mastery, and these figures do show significant change points around onset of mastery. This is for these two figures are for crawling. So for night wakings, there's a decrease in number of night wakings after crawling onset, mastery of crawling onset. And then for sleep efficiency, it's poor leading up to skill onset and then gets better after the skill is acquired. So this is for crawling. And then similar for mastery of walking, we see night wakings increase leading up to the skill onset and then decrease about a week after skill onset. Similar for sleep efficiency, there's a decrease in sleep quality around mastery of walking, and then it returns afterwards. And for parent visits, I didn't show any figures, but we didn't find any changes in number of parent visits to the crib for any sleep metric for any skill. Okay, so the metrics that I just went over are derived from general movement in the crib. The way the computer vision algorithm works, it's detecting activity in the crib. But our second research question is about the nature of the activity that's associated with this increased sleep fragmentation. What is driving these night wakings? What's happening in the crib? We still didn't know what those behaviors looked like, and or whether they were related to a specific skill. So I'll tell you about this second study, also ongoing, that's designed to address this question by using the Nanit camera to collect a video from the crib. So far, 27 families have completed or are currently participating in the study, and our aim, like with the app, is to prospectively capture the onset of key motor skills. So in this study, it's not app-based, but the parents keep a daily checklist diary, and there's a list of gross motor skills that they check off when they see them. So yes or no, did you see your baby perform this skill today? And so for today's talk, I'm just going to report some data around the transition to crawling. So every day, for each item, as parents indicated whether the babies perform that skill, we would look for the onset as it happened in real time. And then we asked Nanit to share video, of course, with parents' consent, for nights around that onset. So, when parents, so families who agreed to participate were not already Nanit users, then we would lend them a camera attached to our lab Nanit account. So we coded these videos looking for key behaviors that could be related to the specific skill that babies were learning. So some preliminary data from that. Um, on the x-axis here, we have the night around onset, where 0 is the night of that the skill was first performed, and we have data from video data from 3 days before to 3 days after. The movements that I'm reporting in this figure are related, movements that we hypothesize would be related to the onset of crawling. So here in the lavender, the light purple, we have uh, limb movements, proportion of time of the wake episodes that babies were engaged in some kind of limb movement. In the dark purple, we have movements related to keeping balance, and in the yellow, we have postural shifts, shifting in and out of posture or between postures. And so we can interpret this pattern as a window into the learning process. So if we take all of these movements together, we can see, so prior to onset, an increase in movements categorized as postural shifts, possibly showing that prior to crawling onset, infants are working towards getting into a crawling stance. And then for balance, the purple, there's an increase on the day of onset, and that continues this progression of learning how to maintain balance, particularly relevant for a crawling related position when babies are up having to keep balance on all fours. And then immediately after crawling onset, we see this increase in limb related movements, which maybe suggests a possible shift in their focus on limb coordination that's necessary for mastering crawling. So, what do we make of all of this? So, for our first study, we examined the relationship between the quality of infant sleep and motor skill onset. And that first set of findings suggests that changes in sleep fragmentation upon motor skill acquisition may reflect increased activity associated with learning or with some kind of general arousal associated with consolidating new information. But it didn't yet tell us exactly what that process was. We did learn that the the significant change points to the sleep metrics, but not to the parent behavior, suggests that parents might not always be cognizant of meaningful changes to their infant's sleep. Also, we suggest that if, as we replicated in the first study, that sleep fragmentation is associated with learning, then we next wanted to know why that would be so. So the second study, we looked at that relationship between specific postures during nightly wake episodes and motor skill onset. And then that study suggests that posture-specific behaviors during wake episodes around skill onset might reflect infants trying out their new skills during sleep. And this might explain previous findings that infants who've begun to crawl are more physically active during their sleep than non-crawlers. So using Nanit, having this tool of auto video sonography allowed us to show not just that activity in general increases upon skill onset, but it really allowed us to start digging into what the nature of that activity is. And so I thank my current and former doctoral students from the lab who collected and analyzed this data, and my funders. And of course, always huge thanks to Natalie, who is such a great supporter of our work.
Amazing. Thank you, Sarah. That was so lovely to see those results hot off the press. And I haven't seen those results previously. So I wanted to ask you a question. Can you explain to me what is your hypothesis around seeing no difference in night wakings and sleep efficiency at onset, but you see those differences for mastery? Can you tell us a little bit about the difference between those two and what you think is going on there?
Right. So these are new. So I'm still trying to tease that apart, why that might be so. But we do know that one of the functions of sleep is memory consolidation. And so it might be that when infants are moving into this mastery phase, then that's when the role of sleep comes in for consolidating all of that new information. It also could be related to how easily babies are aroused when they're processing new information during sleep. And so if they, to process new information, they're spending more time in active sleep. That is less deep sleep, shallower sleep. So they might be more easily aroused, woken, because they're processing all of this information. But that's just the beginning of our thinking. So if anyone else has ideas, we're definitely open to discussing those.
Amazing. Well, you know what, Dr. Ordway just has a question here that I will pose to you, but she said, do you think there could be some changes in sleep architecture that could be associated with developmental milestones, which you kind of answered, but
yes. So of course we don't measure that directly, but there are other people's studies. I'm not sure with infants actually, but I think with preschoolers that show increased sleep spindles during learning new, I believe the task was like a declarative memory task. So it's not really something that we could do with our aged babies, but we could possibly modify a version of that to test it directly. But we haven't been, we don't test, like we don't use polysomnography, for example. But yeah, but other people do.
So we also had another question in the chat asking about rolling. Can you say anything about the results that you saw for rolling? Have you started to analyze the rolling data, or do you not want to say anything about rolling?
We do have some. We haven't done. We haven't analyzed the rolling data with the Milestone app yet. We have a different study that was my doctoral student, former student, Dr. Aaron Damasi, did for part of his dissertation, where he used the heat map data that Nanit generates for parents. And for that data, we showed increased activity moving around the crib around the onset of rolling. As we might expect, babies have this new skill and they use it, that they are more active at night. But we haven't yet coded the video data. We have it, but it's on the to-do list. Yeah.
Okay. So to be continued.
To be continued, yes.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Professor Berger. Always lovely to see you, and we really just love all of our work together.